talk about note-taking apps, which is somewhat of a fascinating topic for me. I feel like this is a space that has evolved a lot over the last several years, and I kind of consider this the golden age for note-taking apps. I'll kind of get into that in a little bit here, why I think that's the case. Specifically, I want to talk about Obsidian, which if you listen to the aforementioned David Sparks, you probably know uh, he's pretty excited about this app as well. I've been digging around with this, and it's actually a lot more than just a note-taking app, but I feel like it has a lot of potential to change productivity workflows. I'm hoping that productivity is something that you guys are excited about. It's definitely something that I geek out about all the time. It's kind of my job over at the Sweet Setup, where we help people pick the best apps for their workflow. In the past, that was easy because there were a handful of apps, and it was easy to say this is the best one because it can do this, that, and the other thing. But as the number of apps has continued to grow, it's becoming a lot harder to just say this is the best one. You got to ask a lot more questions and figure out specifically how people are using it and what they're hoping to get out of it and things like that. But I can say with quite a bit of certainty that for most people, Obsidian is going to be at least one of the note-taking apps that you should consider because of the ability to kind of make it do whatever you want. I'm going to jump in here and share my screen and kind of walk you through some of the basics of this. I'll show you then a couple of the kind of crazy ways that I'm using it, and then we'll leave some time at the end to answer some questions. Does that sound okay? Right. I'm going to share my entire screen because I'm going to jump back and forth between a couple of windows here potentially. All right. I believe you can all see my screen now, hopefully, but this is what Obsidian looks like the first time that you open it. And I should explain a little bit, when you're trying to figure out what is the best note-taking app, you kind of have to consider why you want to take notes in the first place. And there's lots of different answers to that question. I think one of the classical ones is kind of popularized by David Allen. You want to write things down so that you don't forget them, right? Which is great if you have things that you want to do, tasks that you're trying to manage. But where I really am getting the most out of note taking is in capturing ideas, and not just capturing, but developing those ideas. Okay, and therein lies the first problem with traditional note-taking apps, in my opinion, is they are great for just dumping things in, but then you don't see those notes again until you have the thought, hey, I captured something like this before, and you can go search for that text and you can dig it up and you can find it that way. Maybe you store it in the bottom of a folder hierarchy somewhere and you can go down and you can get it, but you have to recall the information first. And what Obsidian is going to do is it's going to connect your notes in a ways where you can kind of stumble upon things from different vectors, different angles, different perspectives, which is number one, going to show you some connections between your notes maybe that you didn't realize were there. And then that is going to help you with the creative output. That's really been the benefit for me. I throw all these ideas, all these notes from the books that I read, all the articles that I'm writing, all that stuff lives inside of Obsidian. It gets connected, and then I can see how those things get connected together using this graph view, which I'll jump into in a minute. But the other thing that this is going to do is it's going to give you some new ways to organize things using things that you're probably already familiar with. So let's just jump into this. All right, now on the left here, this is my Obsidian Vault, it's called. This is where your notes live, and I'm starting from the very beginning in a brand new vault for the purposes of this demonstration, because I know maybe I saw somebody said that they love Obsidian, but I'm assuming that there's some people here who have never even heard of this before. And I don't want to show you what I've done and then you think, well, that's great for Mike. He's been nerding out about this for months and there's That looks like way too much work, though, to get to that point. I just want to start from square one and kind of show you how this would work. By the way, this is a free application. You can download this at obsidian.md. And this is an application that's going to show the notes inside of a folder that is on your Mac. Okay, so this is a demo folder, which is actually in my Dropbox folder. So here's Obsidian. This is our files list. We have nothing here. No file is open. We can create a new file by clicking on this icon right here to create a new note. And this is classical note taking. We're going to give it a title, and then we're going to put the content of the note here. So this could be, my first note. And then this is the contents of the note, and whatever you would put here is going to be plain text. And that has a lot of advantages and disadvantages, but primarily advantages, I believe, because it means that it can be opened in any other text editor. The things that you do inside of Obsidian do not have to stay inside of Obsidian. And so if it's plain text, this is plain text. It's pretty straightforward. That doesn't mean that it has to just be unformatted text, though. It does support markdown formatting, which I'm not going to get into all the specifics of this. But for those of you who aren't familiar with this, it's a very user-friendly way of writing and styling text for the web. But it's actually bled over in a lot of writing apps like Ulysses and IA Writer. A lot of those types of apps use markdown formatting. So it's not going to be like a Microsoft Word or a Pages where you click a button and you bold text, but you can do like 2 asterisks. Okay, and this is bold text. You can do 1 asterisk. This is italic text. It makes lists really easy because you just put a dash and a space. Thing 1, thing 2, thing 3. If you want to do a numbered list, you just do 1 and then a dot. Hit enter, and it automatically creates the next item in the list. If you want to do links, you put inside of brackets the text, and then inside of parentheses, this would be your URL. Okay, and this all looks a little bit messy at the moment, but that's because we are in edit mode. And then the minute that we switch over to preview mode, this is actually what it looks like. So it's just like you would see formatted text inside of your text editor or your word processor, and everything in here is interactive now, including this link. If this was an actual URL, I could click on this, it would take me to that specific link. So that is the basics of creating a note in Obsidian. It does not need to be very complicated. Now, the types of notes that you might create in here, I'll just use an example here. So let's say we want to create a note of books to read. Okay, I created a new note, gave it a new title. Now I've got 2 notes in the left sidebar here in my library. Now, where Obsidian really, where the magic happens is in the links between these different notes. So I've got a note now of books that I want to read, and I might make this just a bulleted list. And the first one I'll say is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Okay, now that's just text, but I can make these links to other pages by using double brackets. Okay, so let's put double brackets around Atomic Habits. All right, so that is now a link to a page inside of Obsidian. And this page has not been created yet. You can see that when I go over to preview mode and I hover over it. However, the moment that I click on it, it creates that page. And now there is a link between my books to read note and the Atomic Habits note. And if you've ever used anything like NVAlt, or NVUltra would be the new version by Brett Terpstra, Drafts has this wiki style linking as well. This is different because this is not just a one-way link from the books to read note here over to the Atomic Habits note. It looks like that because I have no link created in the Atomic Habits note to link back to it. But this is actually a bi-directional link, which means that I can navigate to either of these pages from the other one. And as you start to build out the notes that are in your Obsidian library, that gets more important. And I'll show you more about that in a little bit. If I open up the sidebar here, you'll see this is called the linked mentions and the unlinked mentions. This is showing the connections here between the pages. Okay, so this is the Atomic Habits note. And what it's doing here in the linked mentions section is it's saying that there is one place where this link is mentioned in the books to read note, and searching the contents of the rest of the notes in my Obsidian library, there are no other unlinked mentions, which I could turn into a linked mention by clicking on it. Creating these links is important. It's not something where we want to just do a search and see all of the instances of that word. For example, in my big Obsidian library, I've got a note bookworm for one of the podcasts that I do. I don't want every mention of the word bookworm in my Obsidian vault to be linked, but I want specific ones to be linked so that I can kind of walk through these paths. Essentially, what this is doing is it is showing the connections that kind of already exist inside my brain, and it allows me to come to my notes and surf through them kind of from the top down or from the bottom up. Obsidian doesn't care which direction you come from, and this is kind of a concept known as idea emergence. How these ideas emerge in the moment can be a variety of ways, as opposed to folder-based note-taking where you put something in the folder, like I said, and you got to go down and you got to get it, and you can bring it back up. Let's develop this a little bit further. Here's Atomic Habits. This is a book by James Clear that I really enjoyed. He's got a section in here on the 4 laws of habit change. So we'll create a header for this, and then we can make the 4 laws real quick here. And actually, these are just cue, craving, routine, reward. Okay, and there are questions that go along with this. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip over those. But this is now a section inside here that I can navigate to through the table of contents, or I could actually make this its own page. And in fact, that's probably what I would do. So let's make another one here. 4 laws of behavior change. All right, create that one. Stick those there. And now I've got a note from books to read to Atomic Habits, and a note from Atomic Habits to the 4 laws of behavior change. And as you build this out, you're going to be able to see some really cool connections between these, which I'll show you in just a second here. But these connections are displayed in what's called a graph view. And if I click on this button right here to open the graph view, this shows everything in my Obsidian library, which again, very basic. We've only got 4 notes in here, so there's not a whole lot here. In my big Obsidian vault, I've got something like 35,000 notes. And so you go here and you see 35,000 dots and you're like, no, thanks. This is way too much information. I can't do anything with this. Okay. But I can, in any individual note, access a local graph that looks something like this, okay, and it has these different connections. So from Atomic Habits, we can see the links between these. And if I were to go to Atomic Habits, for example, and click on these 3 dots right here for these more options, I can open what's called a local graph, okay, and this is showing just for the current page all of the connections to it and all of the connections from it. And then from here, we can click on these. Let me put this in the sidebar real quick. So we can drag these elements around. I'm going to put this up here. Okay, so now this over here in the sidebar will update based on the page that we're looking at. So right now we're at Atomic Habits. If we click on books to read, okay, this is now the local graph for the books to read note. I can navigate back to Atomic Habits, and it updates. 4 laws of behavior change, and it updates. Okay, so I can go back and forth between these links just by clicking on these if I wanted to. This graph view, what this does is it visualizes a concept that was really powerful for me in Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Because even though I am a podcaster and I have 3 different podcasts and I do a whole bunch of writing for the Sweet Setup Screencast Online and a couple other places, I actually struggled a lot with considering myself to be creative. I'm a musician as well, and I would try to write songs and I would recognize like a week after I wrote a song that I was happy with that I had ripped off the chord progression or I stole the melody line from this popular song, and I would beat myself up afterwards and well, I guess I'm not creative. I can't make anything completely from scratch. And Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon says that when you create something new, really what you're doing is you are connecting dots in ways that haven't been done before. So in that essence, creativity is a formula. All I've got to worry about is collecting better dots, and then the output takes care of itself. So as long as I am focused on what I can control, which is connecting those dots, collecting those dots, putting those notes inside of a tool like Obsidian and making those connections, forging those connections intentionally, then the output is going to take care of itself. The score is going to take care of itself. And so this is a really cool way to visualize that. Now I'm gonna jump over here to another example. I'm gonna create a new folder, and we'll call this one articles. Okay, now this is a folder hierarchy, which is one way that you can organize your notes. You can also organize your notes using tags, which again are inside of Obsidian. And you can combine these things really powerfully, especially with some of the plugins, which I'll show you in a little bit, to do some really cool and interesting things. Articles is one of the writing articles is one of the primary ways that I use Obsidian, because with a couple of tweaks, it's actually a great writing environment. So let's just walk through this whole process from the idea for an article stage. Okay, so we might capture an idea by creating a new note. And maybe this is an idea for an article on journaling in Obsidian. Okay, so this is what it would look like. It's just the title of the note. It's sitting there in my library, and then when I want to develop this into an article, what I will do is take it from just being a note in my note-taking app. I'll drag it into the articles folder. Remember, because this is looking at files on my computer, that's just changing the location of the text file that is in the Finder as well. And now this note is in articles. And from here, I would go through and I would actually build out the article. And this is where a lot of the markdown formatting comes in for me. I don't use that when I am just jotting down things that I want to make sure that I capture and I don't forget about it. But this is where I will actually incorporate them into my writing, because then when I'm done with that markdown formatted text, I can actually just copy that and paste it into something like WordPress, and it is ready to go. I don't have to do anything else to it. I just copy paste the text and it's ready to be published to the web. So this is where we would write our article. I would also, at the beginning of this, add some metadata, which in Obsidian you can do by using 3 dashes. Okay, so that's kind of like to open and to close the metadata section. And then from here, we can create some tags. All right, so maybe we want a tag for, this is an article for the Sweet Setup, so we'll put TSS, and this one is in progress. So we'll create a tag like that. Okay, now those tags I can access, and I can sort things in Obsidian using those tags. Before I can really see those, I'm going to need to make sure that the tags are turned on. I'm going to go over to the gear settings over here in the lower left. And this is where you can really make Obsidian into the application that you want. There are two types of plugins you can use to expand the capabilities of Obsidian. There's the core plugins. These are the ones that come built in. Okay, and these are all features that you can turn on or off depending on whether you want to use them. So maybe you decide that graph view that Mike's shown me, I have no interest in that. You can just toggle that off. Okay, I wouldn't. That's a pretty essential feature in my opinion, but you could do that. Here's the tag pane. So I'm going to turn this one on. That's going to allow me to see, as you can see there, the tags and the number of occurrences. We can also turn on starred files. So we could star some favorite files if we wanted to. The command palette, daily notes, templates, outlines, whole bunch of other things. I'm going to turn on daily notes because we're going to look at that in a second. Word count, which is down at the bottom, so I can see actually how many words and how many characters are in the note that I'm looking at. So if I'm writing an article for the suite setup, for example, I want to get 1,500 words roughly. It'll give me that inside of Obsidian. You could even create markdown formatted slides and give a presentation from Obsidian. You can create workspaces, which are a bunch of different notes that open in specific places when you launch a specific workplace. And then a couple other features here. There's also community plugins. These are all ones that are developed by third parties. And that is where things really get exciting. We're going to not go there quite yet, though. Okay, so a couple of things that I turned on there. I turned on the starred files. Here are my starred files. I don't have any at the moment, but if I wanted to, I could make this journaling in Obsidian a starred file just by clicking on the more options here and clicking on star. Starred that now. When I click on start, I can see that in my short list there. All right, the other thing, but the tags is what we wanted to see. So now there is a tag pane over here in my sidebar again. And this shows me the tags that I have in my system and then the number of times that they appear. Click on any one of these and it opens up a search. Okay, so tag, hashtag TSS, and it shows me the one article, the one entry basically that has that. So lots of cool things you can do with these. You can nest your tags, which is kind of cool. I'll give you an example of that by going over to the daily notes here next. Now I turned on the daily notes. The daily notes, this is kind of like a digital bullet journal at this point. If anybody's familiar with that, the bullet journal is basically a real brief summary for people who aren't familiar with it. It's based on an analog system, but the idea is that everything that you need to do happens on a daily page. So things that you want to capture, you jot down as certain types of bullets on that page, and then at the beginning of the day, you transfer over the tasks that you need to do to that page, and that functions as your to-do list, basically. Okay, so with our daily notes here, this creates a new note when you click on this Open Today's Daily Note page. And this is a place where you can simply just start jotting things down. So maybe I want to use this for simple task management. You can actually do that. You can do a dash, space, and then brackets with a space in between. That is the to-do.txt formatting for text. And then you can type in the name of the task. So present for the, okay. And then when I go into preview mode, that's actually a checkbox that I can check off. And there is the ability with those search queries to create these pretty custom searches and filters if you wanted to show like all the tasks that are uncompleted or all the tasks that are due on a specific day. But just from the daily notes perspective, this would be an easy way to jot down things that you need to do and then make sure everything gets checked off before the end of the day. I also really like using this for journaling. So what I'll do is I will actually create a separate heading for like journal entries and then just make a bulleted list of the entries that I want to add throughout the day. So for example, today I actually recorded Mac Voices with Chuck Joyner, and I'm going to put Chuck as his own page. All right, then I'll add a tag. Journal/entry. Now what that did, you can see here in the tag panel, it created the journal tag. It also created the entry tag underneath it. I find this helpful if you're going to have different types of tags underneath a specific category. So for me, for example, I'll have journal entries. I will also have usually a gratitude journal. All right, so I am thankful. I'm feeling better after my second COVID shot. Right, and we'll again put journal, gratitude. And so this is applying basically two tags. You can see now I've got one entry for gratitude, one entry under entry, but I have two under journal. So you can have nested tags. You can do that this way. And then with these journal entries, you can also incorporate things like due dates on specific things. So if I had another task, submit my article for Screencast Online. Okay, I could make this due on a specific day simply by putting that day inside of the double brackets. So let's say 2021 05 18. All right. So now if I go to this page tomorrow when I open up Obsidian and I click take me to my daily note, what it's going to show me in the linked mentions are the things that I have to do today. Okay, so here's the task. Oh yeah, I need to submit my article for SEO, Screencast Online, and that is due today. You can also use a community plugin called Calendar. So I'm going to jump over here and explain how community plugins work. There's some really cool stuff in here. There is this toggle, which is a little bit scary, saying that you got to turn safe mode off in order to use these. I am going to do that, and then I'm going to click Browse. And right at the top here, the most popular third-party plugin is this one called Calendar. This is a calendar widget, which I can put inside my Obsidian sidebar and allows me to jump to any date that I want. So let's install this. Okay, so it's installed. Next, we need to enable it. So we go to the installed plugins and we toggle this on. And now under plugin options, we've got calendar. So this has all of the additional settings here. And we can mess with these if we want, but we really don't need to at this point. Let's just jump in and take a look at what this looks like. So here is the calendar, and it is exactly as it describes. Now a calendar, which I can use to jump to any of my dates for my daily notes. And there are dots to represent the dates that have notes associated with them. You can see there's a dot on the 18th, which is because I created that task, which is due on the 18th. The 18th itself doesn't have any text here, but that is a linked to do, and so it's telling me that I have something that I need to do on that particular day, day. And this is really kind of just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these community-based plugins. There are lots of them that you can choose from. Let me just kind of go back in here and show you some of these. They can make some significant changes to the way that Obsidian works. Like, for example, here's one that will display your markdown notes as mind maps. Here's one which turns this daily notes concept into a day planner. There's one here for natural language dates. So when I say I want this task to be due tomorrow, I can just say @tomorrow, and it's going to convert that into the date for me. Lots of really cool stuff here. Note refactor. So if I wanted to like take a big note and select like a chunk of it, I could take that, click a button, and then it's going to create a new note out of that section and put a link back for me. So I have that two-way connection between them. And this stuff is getting updated all the time. This is really where a lot of the the really cool stuff that's happening with Obsidian is going on. So I'm going to jump over to my my other Obsidian database here just to show you kind of what I'm, a couple examples here, what I'm talking about. There is a Kanban plugin, which I actually use for managing my writing tasks. So this is, again, just a markdown formatted list. Okay. And again, you don't really need to even know any formatting for this because we can view this as the Kanban board. Kanban, by the way, for people who aren't maybe familiar with this, simple task management philosophy where you have these lanes or columns of things that you need to do or want to do, and you try to move things from left to right. Mine is really simple. I've just got 3 columns: to do, doing, and done. Okay. To add a new card, we just click the button, and this adds a new entry in the markdown behind the scenes. So maybe I want to create one here on atomic notes. Okay. That's kind of an important concept with Obsidian because these are all individual text files. What you end up with those connections is small pieces of text, small ideas that you can stumble upon a bunch of different ways. All right. Yeah, I can say I want this to be due at a specific date. So maybe I want this due on the 26th. Okay. Add that to my list here. If I put this in brackets, then that's a link. That's what all these are. These will actually take me right to the articles. So here's one, for example, on the power of the local graph. This is an article I'm working on for the suite setup. And this is the actual text. So I can go to the Kanban view and I can say, this is the thing I'm going to be working on. Click that link, go straight to the article, work on this, copy paste it into WordPress, move it into the done column. Let me give you an example here of kind of the links between the notes and how you might use those as with a larger library. My Obsidian Vault here is still very much a work in progress. But it is heavily influenced by a couple of really smart people. One of them is Nick Milo, Linking Your Thinking. And he has a course and a workshop that I've gone through. It was really helpful. And he talked about this idea of a home note. Okay, so a home note is kind of like a starting point inside of your notes library. Think of this at this point as kind of like a choose your own adventure as you're navigating your notes. All right, so here are some different sections in my home note, and everything you see listed here under MOC, that stands for map of content. These are notes I am actively developing. Okay, so here's another important point. With Obsidian, I'm not just capturing things, storing them in a folder, and if I need them later, I can go find them. I'm actively working on developing my thoughts around these ideas. I get new notes, new inspiration. I throw those in here, and those actually influence the end product. So map of content, these are kind of like little workbenches where I am working on a note for these different topics. Now, let me give you an example here. Here's my local graph for this particular page. Let's go over to MOC for habits, okay? This is a page you can see at the top there where I am building out my codified thoughts on the topic of habits. And I've got here the Charles Duhigg model, the cue routine reward. This is the standard model. I have interjected, in addition to all of the notes that I'm collecting on this topic, some of my own opinion notes, which that's kind of important because I've discovered that as I force myself to write out those opinion notes, I solidify this stuff in my own head. So the problem with this model is that as soon as the cue is triggered, the routine automatically happens. You don't have a choice. I don't really like that. I like the James Clear model better. And so I've got 4 laws of behavior change here, James Clear, Atomic Habits. Let's click on Atomic Habits. This is the actual note from the book, from when I read this book. Okay, so I have the author, the bookworm episode where we covered this, my MindNode file. This is embedded from this is an iframe, so this is actually on the web, but this is how I take book notes. And it's not everything that's in the book, but it's all the stuff that jumps out to me. And I've got different emoji in here, which mean different things. It's just my own system, basically, for keeping track of this stuff. I've also got all of this stuff because in my node, you can copy and paste this stuff as markdown text, which is exactly what Obsidian needs. So I paste that below that, and now I've got all of the notes from my mind map here also in the text form. And the local graph here is updating as we go. From Atomic Habits, I've got a link here to Goodhart's Law. So if I click on Goodhart's Law, this is one section in the book. This is the first place that I discovered this, okay? And this is the actual note. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. That's the entire note, okay? And the reason that I have this as its own separate note is that I'm sure I will stumble upon this concept again in another book down the road, and I will create a link then to that book. And then I'll be able to navigate using this local graph either from the top down like we just did, or I could, traditional note-taking sense, have a thought of, what was that thing about when a target, when a measure becomes a target, it's no good anymore. And then I can go find this, and then I can study it out backwards. I can go from here to Atomic Habits. From Atomic Habits, I can go to the MOC for habits. From here, I can go to Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. I could open up all of these different panes together so I can see them all side by side, and I can kind of study this stuff out and refine as I go. That's really one of my principles when I'm using Obsidian, is that every time I'm touching one of these MOCs, these workbench notes, I'm trying to make this more evergreen. I'm trying to make it more valuable. So it's not just like I traditionally would have captured a note. I'm going to capture this quote. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to put it in the library, and I'm going to forget about it, never going to update it, never going to touch it again. I might look at it occasionally, but it's never going to evolve. These notes are always evolving. And that's kind of the point, because this is, as I am updating these and as I am forcing myself to think through my fingers in the keyboard, I am actually cementing these connections in my brain, and it has a very positive benefit to a lot of the creative output that comes from this. There's lots of other stuff that you can do with this. I'm going to stop right there for now, though. I don't want to go too long, and I want to make sure that I answer any questions that people might have.
Okay, if you wish to ask questions, please unmute yourself.
This is much of what you're talking. There's a few pieces here and there that I've heard of before in terms of the stuff that you're talking about, but much of this is brand new to me. That said, I like the idea of having a note-taking app that connects with other notes. I like that connectivity idea. For somebody who would be just starting out on something like this, where would they start? Because it looks very complicated, at least to the ignorant.
Sure.
Me.
Well, let me close my vault here, and let's go back to this default one. What I would say is just start capturing some ideas. I typically do that inside of drafts on my iPhone because that's the capture device that I always have with me. But because this is sitting on top of a folder in Dropbox, it's easy for me to export those things that I capture in drafts to Obsidian after the fact.
But wait a sec, excuse me, you said, so drafts is sitting in Dropbox, or Obsidian? You said this is, meaning Obsidian is?
Yep, Obsidian is sitting in Dropbox. So if I were actually to, whoops, that's the wrong button, vault. Okay, so here are the vaults that I have. This is this demo one. It's just my Dropbox/demo folder. And everything that is in here, let's see if I can open this in the Finder. This is just a bunch of text files. So here is my entire Obsidian vault, and we've created all of these files live here today in the last 30 minutes. But they are just plain text files. They can be opened by any application. And plain text is, I mean, this is an infinite time scale. I'm sure it will disappear at some point, but it can be opened by anything anywhere. So that's one problem with traditional note-taking apps is like Evernote is kind of famous for this. The Roach Motel. It's easy to get stuff in there. I want to switch and go into something else. What do I do with all of these Evernote files, right? These are markdown files that can be opened by any text editor.
Okay.
But essentially, because of the connections, the place I would recommend that people start with this is idea development. You can use it for a lot of different things. You can use it for task management. You can use it for writing articles, which is what I do because it actually is a pretty great writing interface. But developing your ideas is where it really shines. And I
Yeah.
know, by the way, that is not going to be relevant for everybody. I would argue that it should be more relevant for more people than than it is.
Right.
But you need to make sure with any tool, and Obsidian specifically, that you minimize the noise and you maximize the signal.
Right.
And for me, that's why I capture things in drafts, and then I have just a one-step action which dumps that text file into my Dropbox folder. But not everything gets dumped into Obsidian.
Right.
I capture 10, 15 things in drafts a day. I transfer 1 or 2 of those over to Obsidian. The rest of them, after the fact, I realized, you know what, that idea I had when I was out for a run that I thought was awesome, it's really not that great.
Yeah. 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 Something we all share. Okay.
Yep.
I'll hush.
Okay, so more questions?
So if I'm interested in using mind mapping in a more manual sense and making my own drawings, is there a way to import those and save those inside Obsidian?
When you say making your own drawings, are you using like GoodNotes on an iPad or just mind mapping software that you want to embed?
Or even in some cases, just drawing them out manually by hand and taking a picture of them?
Sure. Yeah, you can store files inside of Obsidian. It will handle audio files, it will handle video files, it'll handle images, it'll handle PDFs. You can do iframe embeds like I was showing you before for your specific use case where you want to take a picture of a mind map and you want to add it to a note. You can absolutely do that. Let me give you one quick example, not exactly the same, but I take sketch notes from all of the sermons that I attend, and I have a whole section here on sermon notes, and I export the sketch notes as a PDF, and then I just drag that into Obsidian, and it puts it inside of a files folder in my Obsidian Vault, and it embeds it automatically into the note itself.
Can you also put in references to files that are outside the vault, or is that all handled by URL?
You can. You can use local URLs. You could use something like Hook, for example. Create a Hook URL to an email message or a file somewhere else on your computer, and you could just paste those in. One example would be you can create a link, like in Ulysses, you can create links to Ulysses Sheets or links to specific websites, just like I showed where you click and it opens in that specific application. Obsidian actually has pretty great support for those callback URLs. So if I were to put in, Ulysses : / and then the name of the sheet or that unique identifier, and I click on the link, that'll open that link will open straight to that Ulysses sheet. And if I wanted to link to a specific file in Obsidian, I could even do that. I could go right here, right click on like this article right here, copy this Obsidian URL. Okay, and now I can actually put that inside of a task manager if I wanted to. I don't actually use this task manager, but let's just clear this out as an example. All right, so I'm going to create a new task. And paste in the notes. There's the link. right? So when it comes time to do this task, you know, I could click on this link. It takes me straight to that page inside of Obsidian.
And the reverse works as well, right? You can put a link from using Hook from things into Obsidian and click on that link and get to things.
Yes. Very good point.
So
Yeah.
there's-
So in things, the way that you would do this is you click share, I believe. Nope, that's not it. I just did this. Thought it was share. Cannot recall now. But you can, yeah, you can get like a things : / URL. And then you can paste that inside of your vault, and then it would open that. That's just a local callback URL. And any application on your Mac that supports those callback URLs, it'll just open straight in that application. It's not going to open a web browser first and say, hey, do you want to open this application? It's just going to open that application, take you straight to that specific spot. Obsidian also has iOS apps, which are right now in private beta. But the iOS apps work the exact same way. So if you had things as your task manager on your Mac and on your iOS devices, theoretically you have that things URL, you tap on that inside of Obsidian, it opens that application on your iOS device, takes you straight to that task or that sheet in Ulysses or whatever. Callback URLs are definitely a rabbit hole, but you can do some pretty powerful stuff when you know how to connect them.
Okay, and once again, this is available from obsidian.nd on the web.
Correct. Yes. And the application is completely free. Even all of the additional like community plugins that I showed you today, those are available for free. And it's just an application that sits on top of your Dropbox folder, is looking at the contents of your Mac, and it's writing in plain text. So it's not like it sucks everything up and then you have to figure out how to get it out if you don't want to use it. The only thing that you would pay for if you decide to do so in Obsidian is there are 2 additional add-ons. One is for publishing. So you can publish your notes or a selection of notes to the web as a website that people can go and navigate. You can password protect it. So if you wanted to like make a section of your notes available to Patreon subscribers or something, you know, you could give them the password, then they could access your notes. Or there is a sync service which will take your files, upload them to the Obsidian sync service, and then send those to an Obsidian app on another computer or on an iOS device. You really don't need to do that. Okay, you can, like I said, I have mine sitting on Dropbox. You could have it sitting in iCloud, and then those files, you can edit them in any application, and those changes will get synced. But if you wanted to use the Obsidian sync service, it is actually end-to-end encrypted. So everything is secure.
Anybody,
Okay,
anybody else?
Just have a quick comment. I think this is very intimidating to look at and of all the things that it can do, and it's an extremely powerful program. But at its core, it is a note-taking app that you can use just to link between notes and find things easier and grow over time. I've been using this since October and been growing with it. And I kind of look at this like Excel, right? Excel is a really powerful thing, and there's not a lot of railings. You can make Excel do anything, and you have to learn a few rules, and you have to play with it for over time to get a sense of, to whatever degree that you want to make Excel do things. And this is kind of has that same learning curve to get to some of the advanced bits, but it's not that hard. It just takes a little time to kind of get started with and do basic note-taking things, and you'll get the hang of it.
That's a very good point. And I will share that the first time I downloaded and tried Obsidian, I immediately shut it down. I'm like, this is too complicated. That was probably June or July of last year. And I was pretty heavily invested in Roam research. Obsidian has come a long way since then, and it's kind of crazy the rapid development with the two-person development team that they have. If I were to give advice to past Mike, I would say just open Obsidian, start a new vault. So you're starting from scratch, create a couple of notes, and create a couple of links. And once you start doing that, you will start to see how it can be useful for you. And the moment that you latch on to this is the problem that this can solve for me, that's when things start to gain momentum. And over time, what I've discovered is there are things that I have wanted to do for a very long time that I gave up trying to find an app that could do this sort of thing. And I'm like, I go back and I revisit and I'm like, I wonder if Obsidian can do this. Yeah, it can. One last real quick example. I do this form of journaling called daily questions. I picked it up from Marshall Goldsmith in the book Triggers. I like this because it's not based on your output or your like what you actually produced, but on your intentions. So these are my daily questions. Did I do my best to grow spiritually, love my wife, love my kids, be a good friend, learn something, create something, and exercise? And Marshall Goldsmith's format, you answer these on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, so these are my prompts. These are my tags. You can see they are divvied up there, and then they are assigned a value. Okay, so I fill these out every day. And then periodically, I do this once every 3 months. I go on a personal retreat and I just want to reflect on what I've done well, what could have gone better, chart my course for the next couple of months. I've always wanted a way to review this stuff and kind of see the trends. Well, there is a community plugin called Tracker, which is free, which takes these values and it plots them on a chart, and it looks something like this. It's exactly what I've wanted for a long time. You mentioned Excel. That's actually what Marshall Goldsmith does. And I was like, there ain't no way I'm going to use Excel for my journaling. But this is, it's easy for me to get the stuff in with my daily page and my daily notes. And then this gives me exactly what I want. I can look at this data. I can see, the days that I was really low, like what was going on there? Why were those so low? Or where are the trends? So one of these that's, I'm doing pretty well in, another one that really needs some attention. This is the kind of thing, like you can build absolutely anything with Obsidian. And once you start solving one problem, just one, then you will start to see other ways that you can use this to solve other problems. And it's not just like do everything, but do none of it well either. The community plugins are developed by some really smart people who have the same problems that they're trying to solve, and they can't find an app that does it that specific way. So it's different than like Evernote back in the day where you could have like the checklists and things, but it's not going to be nearly as powerful as a task manager. There are plugins that can turn this into a full-fledged task manager if that's what you want. If it's not what you want, don't worry about it.
I even see some potential here to do list management of just general things. Maybe not quite as far as making a full relational database, but it could be done here.
Yep. Yeah, and the topic of lists and specifically like tasks and projects, part of the Linking Your Thinking workshop that I went through, there was somebody who was sharing their capstone project, they call it. So when you sign up for that course, you kind of have like an idea of what you want to build. And then you spend 6 weeks building it out. And there was somebody who presented who runs 7 different companies and 3 nonprofits. And they do it all out of Obsidian. They have a page for each one of their businesses, and they use the queries, the search to embed all of the tasks that are associated with those projects. And every day he just goes through all 10 of those different projects. He picks the thing at the top, and he does that one thing. So he moves each and every one of them forward.